What do Falcons do? We rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general, the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, the Golden Hard Doc and a lifelong sports fan, coming back to you with the preview of the Falcons taking on the Indianapolis Colts in their final home game of the season. This is a game that when I looked at the beginning of the season, I thought, yeah, the Falcons should win this one. We're probably going to be better than the Colts this year. And boy, that has just not panned out at all. I've already done in my prediction video the prediction that the Colts are going to win. However, I will say that when I was looking at betting odds earlier this week, that the Falcons were actually favored by 2 points. I don't know why we're favored by 2 points. I don't know if Hollywood or Las Vegas just has some sort of unfounded faith in Taylor Heineke at quarterback. I have no faith in Arthur Smith at coach, so I don't really know why we have this unfounded faith here. But I am going to really quickly go through a preview of this and see what I think are the keys to victory. And again, this is going to be as healthy of a game as we have had in a while. If some of these guys who have been injured come back, we only had one player on the injury report who did not practice on Thursday. I'm making this video on Friday morning, so we don't have the Friday practice in. But the only guy that didn't practice was Bud Dupree, so he is probably going to be out. He hasn't even had a limited practice. I expect that he will remain out, but you've got guys like Calais Campbell who's back. He just had veteran rest. Drew Dahlman has put in 2 limited practices, so I look for him to probably step in back at starting center, which we need. Chris Lindstrom has had a limited practice ×2, so I look for him to probably play. Jake Matthews limited practice ×2. You had Caleb McGarry, who didn't practice on Wednesday, but did have a limited practice on Thursday. It'll definitely depend on what happens today, and some of these guys may be a game time decision, but 4 of our offensive linemen, 4 of our starters are a little banged up right now, so we need at least 3 of them to come back, and I think we can get 3 of them. Then we have David Onyemata, who has had 1 limited practice yesterday on Thursday. We need him up the middle right now. We really need him at tackle position right now to be that run stopper and to really step in, because it looks like all signs are pointing to Jonathan Taylor returning just in time for the fantasy playoffs here. He's a guy who most people think has a top 10 matchup this week. You also have Michael Pittman, who's in concussion protocol for the Indianapolis Colts and had a limited practice this past week. So again, or past Wednesday. We don't have the Thursday report out for these guys yet, but Jonathan Taylor had a full practice on Wednesday. You have Jack Anderson and Matt Gay, guard and kicker for the Colts, who both didn't practice on Thursday. Zach Moss also didn't practice Thursday. It'll be big if Jonathan Taylor is there without any significant backup with Zach Moss, because Zach Moss has been a man on fire when he's been there. Braden Smith has also been out or also didn't play as a tackle for them. So we'll see. The point is, both of these teams are fairly healthy overall. I do think Gardner Minshew is going to be the difference maker for this team. For the Colts, I think that's ultimately where they're going to find success, is through the air. Because we do have some guys that you can pick on. Richie Grant at safety, you can pick on him. And I think we have fully run the course of the Richie Grant experiment at safety. I think you can probably pick a little bit on Jeff Okudah. And I do think that the mix of Jeff Okudah and CP3 is a good mix, but I don't know that either one of them is a clear-cut starter. I think CP3 has better potential overall and has not squandered his talent so far. But again, it just really depends. I do want to have faith in the Falcons. I think we can win. And with that in mind, the New York Times came out with a playoff predictor and allows you to go through and kind of basically say what you want to happen to try and get you into the playoffs. Right now, because the Saints lost yesterday on Thursday Night Football, the Falcons do have an 11% chance of making the playoffs, and 8% of that is hosting a playoff game as the division winner, because it's still very much possible, but we do need some things to happen. So first off, if the Falcons win this week against the Colts, it raises us to 16%. If we win against the Bears, it raises us to 24%. And if we beat the Saints in the last week, it raises our chances to 53% outright to make the playoffs. Now, 31% of that is hosting a wildcard game. 23% of that, because of how bad the NFC is, and because that would put us at 9-8, would give us a winning record and put us in position to be the wildcard team. Now, I have no thoughts whatsoever that we are actually going to win and make a playoff run. But it would be nice to host a game at the Benz. If we're not going to do that, I really kind of hope we don't make the playoffs, because other than that, I don't have much hope here. We have to win out is ultimately what the message is, but other things that need to happen this week, the Jaguars beating the Buccaneers is huge. That raises our chances to 72% to make the playoffs. And that's really the only other thing that needs to happen this week. We already know that the Rams beat the Saints. Most of this has to do with our division. And then next week, the Saints at Buccaneers. If the Buccaneers win, then it drops our chances to 55%. The likelihood that we are a wild card is 22%. The chances that we are the division winner are 31%. But if the Saints beat the Buccaneers, then what that does is gives us, and then we turn around and beat the Saints, it gives us a 100% chance. So basically, we need two things to happen here. Three things, actually. We need to win every single game, and then we need the Jaguars to beat the Buccaneers this week, and we need the Saints to beat the Buccaneers next week. It is in Tampa Bay, so it'll be a little bit harder for them to do that, but that's what we need to happen. And if that doesn't happen, it doesn't mean that we lose our chance at the playoffs, but say the Buccaneers win next week, well, the Buccaneers will play the Panthers in Carolina, and if Carolina were to win that game, and again, we beat the Saints, we do make the playoffs. We win the division. If the Buccaneers win, we have an outside shot at a wild card spot, so basically, we're in a position now where the Buccaneers, we really need them to lose at least the Saints game. If they win against the Jaguars, and if they win against the Jaguars and the Saints, then we pretty much have no shot at the division title. But we do have a shot at the wild card. But again, it just really depends. We are not eliminated completely yet, but it does need a few things to happen for us to have a decent chance at the playoffs. Obviously, the NFC has a bunch of 6-8 and 7-7 teams right now. Nobody is really dominant in that wild card position. You have basically 3 or 4 really good teams, and then the entire rest of the field. There's only a couple of teams that have been eliminated so far. But again, Falcons, I don't have much hope that we actually make the playoffs. I am honestly a little bit more hopeful that we would potentially go 6-11. I hate those words coming out of my mouth. But if it means getting rid of Arthur Smith to go 6-11 and finding somebody who can actually create a winning culture, that is worth it to me. Now, again, I want to be very clear. Next year, 2024 season, I don't have much hope of winning even with the team that we have. The defense would have to play lights out just like they have pretty much for all of the season, and offense would have to do a complete 180. We would need to be averaging at least 7 to 10 points more per game than we are now to even have a shot next year. Again, we play the AFC West, which is Patrick Mahomes. It is Denver Broncos, the Raiders, and the Chargers, who will have a new coach as well and solid talent. You're going to have to play the NFC East, which is the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Giants, the Commies, and most of those teams have beat us in the recent past. And then again, right now you have to play our division twice. Obviously, we can't run the table in the division, even though it looks like we might do that early in the season. And then the other thing right now, if the season ends today, then we have to play the Bengals, we have to play the Seahawks, and we have to play the Packers. And none of those are going to be easy games. All of those have quarterbacks and coaches that at least can make it competitive, if not be the favorites outright in those games. And it gets worse if we win the division. Because if we win the division, then this is pretty much set. We will be playing the San Francisco 49ers, we'll be playing the Baltimore Ravens, and we'll be playing most likely the Lions again next year. So it gets tougher if we win the division, and it makes the likelihood that we have a winning schedule or a winning season next year go way, way down, in my opinion, because I don't think we win any of those 3 games if rosters more or less stay the same from year to year here. Obviously, there's a lot of big moves that will happen in the offseason, a lot of free agent moves, but Kyle Shanahan's a great coach over there in San Fran, so if we have to play him, I do think they're probably the favorite to win the Super Bowl right now, and they'll probably remain the favorite to win the NFC again next year as long as contracts work out. But guys, I do think the Colts, unfortunately, are going to take the Falcons in this one. It would surprise me if the Falcons won, but I would be ecstatic if we won. If we don't win this week, again, we are not completely eliminated, but we are even more dependent on other things happening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. And as always, rise up.